Hello, everyone. You want to change your life? Then it starts with one word: ownership. You've got to take full, absolute, undeniable responsibility for where you are and where you're going. I don't care what happened in the past. I don't care who hurt you, what wasn't fair, or how hard it's been. Because here's the truth: as long as you're pointing the finger at someone else, you're giving away your power. You're giving away control. And if you're not in control, who is? There's a moment in everyone's life where you either choose to rise or stay stuck. You can't steer a parked car, and you can't change a life you won't claim. So the first step to building anything better, your mindset, your business, your relationships, your body, your spirit, is to own every part of it, not just the parts you like, all of it, even the messy, painful, disappointing parts. When you say, "I am the one who created this," even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, that's the moment you gain the power to create something new. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing your influence. When you own the problem, you gain the ability to own the solution. But let me tell you what most people do. They wait. They wait for someone to come fix it. They wait for the government, the economy, their partner, their boss, their parents, their past, anything outside of themselves to shift so they can finally move forward, and they wait their life away. But the truth is, nobody is coming. That may sound harsh, but it's liberating. Because if nobody is coming, then guess what? It's all on you, and that means you're free. Free to start over. Free to rise. Free to rewrite the story. Now here's what happens when you take ownership. You begin to tap into your personal power. Not the kind that comes from ego or proving something, but the real power that comes from being aligned with your truth. The kind of power that fuels your hunger, that makes you relentless, that makes you wake up every morning with purpose, even if you're tired, even if the world tells you it's impossible. That kind of power only comes when you say, "This is my life. No one else is responsible. I choose how it unfolds." And once you accept that, you stop living in reaction and you start living in creation. You don't react to problems, you prepare. You lead, you decide. You stop wasting energy trying to control everything outside of you and start focusing on what you can shift inside of you. Because let's be honest, things will go wrong. You'll get knocked down, but when you've taken ownership, you don't stay down. You bounce back. You adapt. You learn. And then you keep going stronger, wiser, and more focused than ever. It all starts with a decision. A real one, not a maybe someday, a decision. A decision backed by commitment, backed by action. The kind of decision that says, "I'm done waiting. I'm done hoping. I'm done blaming. From this moment on, I own it, all of it." This is what separates the people who stay stuck from the people who build empires, legacies, and unstoppable lives. The difference isn't their talent, or their resources, or their past. The difference is that they decided to take control. They said, "No more excuses, no more stories that limit me." And they replaced those stories with ones that empower them, that fuel them, that pull them forward every single day. And guess what? You can do the same. Right now, it starts by stopping the blame, the complaining, the justifying. That's the old version of you. The new version takes responsibility. The new version asks, "What can I do today to shift this? How can I grow through this? Who do I need to become to overcome this?" When you operate from that mindset, your life changes fast, because action flows from belief. And when you believe that you are in control, your actions follow suit. You stop procrastinating. You stop tolerating the habits that hold you back. You start demanding more from yourself because now you know you're the one steering the ship. And here's the beautiful part: once you take ownership, it affects everything. Your energy changes, your focus sharpens. Your confidence grows. Why? Because now you're no longer the victim of your story, you're the author. And authors get to write the next chapter however they choose. This is the foundation of every breakthrough. You cannot build a powerful life on excuses. You cannot create excellence without responsibility. You want a better body, own your discipline. You want deeper relationships, own your communication. You want to grow financially, own your financial habits. It's not about blaming yourself for where you are. It's about empowering yourself to get where you want to go. The moment you stop waiting and start owning is the moment you begin to grow. And growth is where your power lives. It's where your joy lives. It's where your purpose is awakened. But it all starts with that single, uncompromising decision. I take full control of my life starting now. Ready for that shift? Then let's go. Because from this moment forward, it's your life and you're in charge. You want to take control of your life. Then you need to master the force that drives every decision you make your standards. Most people think they're stuck because of their circumstances, their resources, or their past. But that's not the real reason. They're stuck because of what they're willing to tolerate. The life you're living right now is a direct reflection of the standards you've settled for. Let's get brutally honest. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's because you've accepted that as your financial standard. If your relationships feel disconnected, it's because you've tolerated that emotional distance. If your body feels weak, it's because you've allowed your health to become a low priority. This isn't about guilt, this is about power. Because once you understand that your standards shape your results, you get to raise them. And that's the beginning of everything. You don't get what you want in life, you get what you absolutely must have. There's a big difference between I'd like to be in shape, and I will not live another day in a body that doesn't reflect my power. There's a world of difference between I'd like a better relationship, and I refuse to accept anything less than deep connection, honesty, and passion. You raise your standards, you raise your life. But here's the challenge: raising your standards means letting go of old patterns. It means letting go of comfort. It means saying no to the parts of yourself that are addicted to average. You have to get to a point where mediocrity becomes painful, where excuses no longer satisfy you, where you look at yourself in the mirror and say, that version of me, the one who procrastinates, who hesitates, who settles, that version is done. This isn't about perfection. This is about demand. You start to demand more from yourself, more energy, more focus, more discipline, more follow-through. And when you raise your internal bar, your external world follows, always. Now here's where most people fall short. They raise their goals but not their standards. They say, I want to make more money. I want to grow my business. I want to get fit. But they still act like the same version of themselves that created the current reality. That's not how transformation works. You can't expect a new outcome from the same mindset. You must become the person who lives at that higher standard in your habits, in your decisions, in your daily rituals. You want to know the fastest way to shift your life? Look at what you're tolerating. Ask yourself, what am I no longer willing to put up with? Is it the extra weight, the low energy, the chaotic schedule, the toxic environment, the emotional numbness, the financial struggle? Draw the line. Decide that your new standard is non-negotiable. And when I say non-negotiable, I mean there is no going back. People who change their lives radically don't have more time or more luck. They have higher standards. They've trained their minds to expect more, to demand more, and to align their actions with their ultimate vision, not their current limitations. But understand this, raising your standards doesn't mean you instantly have all the answers. It means you commit to figuring them out. It means you stop saying, I don't know how, and start saying, I will learn whatever it takes. Because when your standard says, this is who I am now, your brain finds a way to support that identity. Your emotions, your focus, your language, they all begin to align with that new version of you. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Growth always is. But it's also the only way forward. If you want a new life, you need a new operating system. One that isn't driven by fear or habits or other people's expectations, but by your own unshakable commitment to rise. And don't confuse high standards with being hard on yourself. This isn't about self-criticism, it's about self-respect. You raise your standards because you believe you're worth it. You're not here to live a small life. You're here to expand, to lead, to create, to contribute. And that requires the version of you that shows up with full power, not half effort, not maybe later energy. So here's what you do. Decide what you're no longer willing to tolerate physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually. Define what the next level looks like in clear, tangible terms. Then design your daily actions to reflect that standard, not once in a while, every day. Consistency is what locks in a standard. It's not about intensity for a week, it's about identity for a lifetime. Because when your identity is tied to excellence, to growth, to service, to energy, then even on your bad days, your minimum becomes most people's maximum. That's the power of raising your standards. It elevates your life by elevating your identity, and when your identity evolves, so does your destiny. So I'll ask you now, what will you no longer accept? Who will you no longer be? What's the new standard for your life, and are you ready to live it, no matter what? Because once you lock that in, everything changes, not someday now. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. You already know that. But here's the problem: most people are addicted to comfort, and they don't even realize it. They think they're making progress because they're busy, because they're checking off tasks, because they're staying productive. But productivity is not the same as progress. Growth only comes when you consistently push yourself beyond what's familiar, beyond what's easy, into that space where everything inside you is screaming, "This is hard." And you keep going anyway. You've got to learn how to love that place. Not just tolerate it, love it, because that's where transformation happens. Not when everything is aligned, not when the path is clear, but when it's messy and uncertain and challenging, and you still show up fully. The strongest version of you isn't born in the moments when things are working, it's revealed when nothing seems to be working, and you choose to rise anyway. If you look at any area of your life where you're stuck, where you've plateaued, it's likely because you've built walls of comfort around it. Maybe it's your career, where you've mastered your role, but now you're coasting. Maybe it's your relationships, where routine has replaced passion. Maybe it's your body, where you've stopped challenging it, and now you're just maintaining. Comfort isn't evil, but it's not your either not when your soul is craving expansion. You are not designed to stay the same. Life itself is a pattern of growth and decay, expansion and contraction. If you're not actively growing, you're slowly withering. That's not just a motivational phrase, it's biology, it's physics, it's truth. Your brain is wired for adaptation. If you don't challenge it, it atrophies. Your body, your relationships, your mind, they all obey that law. So the question isn't, do I want to grow? The question is, what am I willing to go through to grow? And this is where people hesitate. Because growth costs something. It costs comfort, it costs certainty, it costs the illusion of control, but the price of staying the same is far more devastating: regret, stagnation, unfulfilled potential. That pain is quieter, but it lasts a lifetime. You have to choose your pain: the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment. One builds your future, the other destroys it. So how do you train yourself to live outside the comfort zone? You condition it. You expose yourself to discomfort every single day. You don't wait for life to challenge you, you challenge yourself. You get up earlier than you want to. You speak when you're afraid. You push one more rep when your body says stop. You invest in that business, take that course, start that project even when your mind says, "I'm not ready." Growth is not about readiness, it's about willingness. Are you willing to take the step without the guarantee? That's the key. There will never be a perfect time. There will never be a moment when everything aligns. You create the momentum by acting before you feel prepared. That's how you grow. You act and then you adapt. You move and then you master. And the discomfort that once terrified you becomes the new normal. That's how you expand your identity. That's how you evolve. Understand this. Growth doesn't require a radical leap. It requires consistent, courageous decisions, tiny acts of bravery repeated daily. You don't need to climb Everest today. You just need to take one uncomfortable step. Do that long enough, and you'll look back one day and not even recognize who you used to be. And here's the beautiful part: when you grow, everything around you grows. Your impact multiplies. Your relationships deepen. Your confidence skyrockets. People feel your energy shift. Why? Because when you stretch yourself, you inspire others to stretch too. You give them permission to rise. That's how leaders are made. Not by staying comfortable, but by living as an example of what's possible when you refuse to settle. Now, some people will tell you to be realistic, to stay safe, to be grateful for what you have, and yes, gratitude is powerful, but it should never be an excuse to stay small. You can be deeply grateful and still hungry for more. Gratitude fuels growth, it doesn't replace it. Don't confuse peace with passivity. Real peace comes from knowing you're living in alignment with your highest potential, and you can't do that from the comfort zone. So what are you tolerating today that you know deep down is holding you back? What's the thing you keep avoiding, the conversation, the habit, the challenge because it's uncomfortable? That's your growth zone. That's your edge, and you need to live on that edge more often. You need to seek it. You need to make it your home, because every time you step into that space, you're becoming stronger, sharper, more resilient, more unstoppable. You want to live an extraordinary life, then get addicted to discomfort. Learn to embrace the unknown. Make stretching your new standard, because in that stretch lies your freedom, your breakthrough, your future. And once you experience the power of living outside the comfort zone, you'll never want to go back. Because that's where life is truly lived, not in the predictable, but in the possible. Not in what is, but in what could be. So lean in, push forward, grow. We live in a world where people are constantly waiting for someone to tell them it's okay to take the leap, waiting for the timing to be perfect, waiting for the approval of their family, their friends, their boss, society. And the truth is that waiting becomes a prison of potential that's never lived out. And if you're not careful, your entire life will become a waiting room, waiting to be ready, waiting to feel enough, waiting to be chosen. But no one's coming to give you permission. You don't need anyone's validation to become the person you were born to be. You don't need your past to agree with your future. You don't need the people around you to understand the calling in your heart. That vision inside of you, that dream that's been tugging at your soul, that wasn't given to anyone else, it was given to you. That's all the permission you'll ever need. There is no moment coming in the future where a light turns green and a voice says, okay, now you can live fully. That moment is right now. Every second you delay, you are reinforcing the belief that you are not in control of your destiny. But you are. You've always been. The only difference between those who do and those who don't is not ability, it's decision. It's ownership. It's the willingness to say, this is my life. I get one shot and I will not spend it waiting. We've all been conditioned, trained from an early age to ask for permission. In school, we were taught to raise our hand. In life, we were taught to follow the rules, stay in line, and not make too much noise. But transformation doesn't come from following. It comes from leading your own life, breaking out of the pattern. Rewriting the script, that's where your breakthrough begins. There are people right now who are less qualified than you, less experienced than you, with fewer resources than you, and they're doing the thing you keep talking about. They didn't wait for someone to give them the green light. They gave it to themselves, and that's the key. You've got to decide. Are you going to be the person who talks about what they could do, or the person who actually does it? When you stop waiting for permission, you start owning your power. You stop outsourcing your worth to other people's opinions. You realize that you don't need someone to see your potential. You need to see it for yourself. When you make that mental shift, your energy changes, your posture changes, your voice changes, because you're no longer trying to convince people you matter. You know you do, and when you show up like that, the world can't help but notice. Think about how many opportunities have passed you by because you hesitated, because you questioned yourself, because you thought you weren't ready. Readiness is a myth. There is no such thing as ready. There is only now. The action creates the clarity. The step creates the path. You don't wait to feel confident. You move and confidence follows. Every great leader, every successful entrepreneur, every visionary artist, none of them waited for the stars to align. They acted in spite of uncertainty. They moved forward with courage, not confidence. They knew that clarity comes through action, not thought, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to stop negotiating with your fears and start responding to your purpose. Look, you weren't born to be average. You weren't put on this earth to blend in, to play small, to sit on the sidelines of your own life. You were born to create, to contribute, to lead, to expand, and that doesn't happen when you wait. That happens when you decide, when you draw the line in the sand and say enough. I'm done waiting, I'm done hoping, I'm done holding back. From this day forward, I give myself full permission to become who I was meant to be. That kind of declaration, that level of certainty, moves mountains. It shifts your emotional state. It puts you back in control. Suddenly, what once seemed impossible starts to feel inevitable, not because the circumstances changed, but because you did. Your standards changed. Your level of ownership changed, and that shift, that's where real growth begins. So ask yourself right now, what area of your life have you been waiting in? What dream have you kept on hold because you were waiting for someone else to agree with it? Where have you given away your power in exchange for acceptance or approval? That ends today, it has to, because your life will only change when you change. Your future starts when you decide to take it. No more hesitation, no more permission slips, no more needing someone else to tell you it's time. It's time because you say so. It's time because you're ready to grow. It's time because your life is too valuable to waste another day playing small. And the moment you own that, everything begins to shift. You'll see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You'll feel strength where you once felt fear. You'll hear a voice inside you, louder than the noise outside, saying, "Let's go." And you'll realize it was never about waiting for permission. It was always about waking up to your power. So wake up, step up, show up, not someday, today, because this is your life, and no one else gets to write it but you. There comes a moment when you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself one question. Am I owning my life, or am I just explaining it away? Because let's be honest, most people don't live empowered lives. They live excuse-filled lives. They don't mean to, but they've rehearsed the reasons why they can't so often. Those reasons have become their truth. But the truth isn't what limits you. The story you keep telling yourself about why you're limited, that's what has to be destroyed. Excuses are seductive. They protect your comfort. They justify the fear. They let you off the hook. I don't have time. I wasn't raised that way. I've tried before and it didn't work. But every time you give an excuse, you're handing away a piece of your power. You're making yourself a victim in a life that desperately needs you to rise as a leader. And if you're not careful, those excuses become your identity. Now here's what most people miss. The minute you stop blaming your circumstances, your parents, your past, your boss, your bank account, the moment you stop pointing outward and start looking inward, you get your power back. And that shift, that one shift from external blame to internal ownership, that's the birth of transformation. Because when you realize that your excuses are just a defense mechanism to protect you from change, you can dismantle them. You can tear them down and replace them with empowering beliefs. Beliefs that say, I'm resourceful, I'll find a way, I may not have all the answers, but I have the will to figure it out. That's where personal freedom begins, not when your life gets easier, but when you get stronger. And I get it, some of the stories we carry were formed in pain. Maybe you grew up in a household where no one believed in you. Maybe you failed so many times that you're terrified of trying again. Maybe life hit you hard and you've been living in survival mode ever since. That's real, but listen to me. You can't heal in the same environment that taught you to shrink. You've got to disrupt the narrative. You've got to say, yes, that happened, but that's not who I am. Empowerment isn't pretending your pain doesn't exist. It's choosing to use that pain as fuel. It's saying, because of what I went through, I've got strength most people don't understand. I've got fire most people can't see, and you use that to build a new identity. Not one based in wounds, one built on worth. You shift from excuses to empowerment the moment you decide to stop being at the mercy of life and start becoming the author of it. Every day you wake up, you've got two choices: to tell yourself why you can't or to remind yourself why you must. That one decision, made consistently, will shape your destiny. And yes, it takes practice. You've trained your brain for years to default to doubt, to lean into limitation, to protect the familiar. But what if you started training it for something else? What if every time your mind said, I can't, you answered with, how can I? Every time you caught yourself saying, I'm not ready, you shifted to, what's the first step? That's how you retrain the subconscious. That's how you build mental muscle. You can't build a powerful life with a disempowering mindset. You can't live your purpose while rehearsing your pain. You've got to pick one, excuses or results, not both. And that choice gets made not once, but daily. It's made in the moments when you feel tired, when fear creeps in, when things get inconvenient. That's when you've got to stand in your truth and say, this may be hard, but I'm harder. This may be uncomfortable, but I'm unstoppable. And let's be clear, empowerment doesn't mean you never struggle. It means when you do, you know it doesn't define you. It means you don't retreat at the first sign of resistance. You lean in, you rise up. You adapt, adjust, overcome, because that's who you've decided to be. And here's the beautiful part. When you shift out of excuses and into power, you become magnetic. People feel it. They see it in your energy, your posture, your presence. You start to attract opportunity, not because the world changed, but because you did. Because you're no longer waiting to be rescued. You've become your own rescue. That's what leadership looks like. That's what growth demands. Not perfection, just ownership. Radical, unapologetic ownership of your time, your thoughts, your choices, your future. And if you can do that consistently, if you can interrupt the pattern of excuse and replace it with decisive action, there's nothing you can't achieve. So today, ask yourself, where have I been justifying mediocrity? What stories have I been telling to excuse my inaction? And what belief do I need to adopt right now that would pull me into my power? You answer those questions honestly, and you act on them, and I promise you, you won't recognize your life 6 months from now. You were not born to live in limitation. You were born to rise, but to rise, you've got to release the lies that keep you small. And the biggest lie of all is that you can't. You can, you will, and it starts now. The difference between a life of average and a life of greatness comes down to one thing, your standard, not your goals. Not your dreams, your standard, because you will always find a way to meet your standard, not your potential. Potential is limitless, but standards are the lines you draw in the sand, the boundaries of what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you demand from yourself. You don't get your goals, you get your standards. You don't rise to your ambitions, you fall to your expectations. So, the question is simple. What's the minimum you're willing to settle for in your life? See, everyone has a standard. The problem is most people set theirs unconsciously. They settle for I just want to survive, or I just want to get through this month. They normalize struggle. They get comfortable being overwhelmed. And before they know it, they've built a life that matches their excuses instead of their capabilities. But the people who change their lives, who build legacies, not just lifestyles, are the ones who raise their standards and refuse to shrink back. They decide right now, this is the line, this is who I am, and I will not accept anything less than the best version of myself showing up every single day. That level of decision changes everything. Because when you raise your standard, your actions follow, your habits evolve, your energy elevates, you stop negotiating with weakness, you stop arguing for your limitations, you stop entertaining the voices that tell you it's okay to stay stuck. You begin to operate from identity, not from willpower. That's the game changer because willpower fades. Motivation comes and goes, but identity, when you say, this is who I am now, that sticks. That becomes the lens through which every choice gets filtered. If your standard is, I'm someone who follows through, then the moment you feel resistance, you override it. If your standard is, I'm not the kind of person who makes excuses, then when your mind tries to justify delay or distraction, you shut it down. Because that's not aligned with who you are, let me give it to you straight. If you don't intentionally set your standard, life will do it for you. And life doesn't always set it high. Your environment will influence it. Your past will try to anchor it. Your comfort zone will beg you to lower it. That's why you've got to raise it consciously, with intensity, and declare, this is the new me. This is the new level I play at. Now understand, when you raise your standard, life will test you. The moment you say, I don't tolerate mediocrity anymore, guess what shows up? Challenges, delays, doubts, not because the universe is punishing you, but because it's seeing if you're serious. Anyone can raise their standard when it's easy. But the shift happens when it's hard and you refuse to go back, when it's painful and you hold the line, When it's inconvenient and you say, "This is still who I am," that's how unshakable standards are built. Not in the highlight reel, but in the hidden moments, in the days where no one is watching, and you choose discipline over comfort, focus over distraction, power over pity. That's where self-respect is forged. That's where you become someone you're proud of, and let's be honest, deep down you already know what your true standard is. You've just been avoiding it. You've been pretending that what you're doing is enough when it isn't. You've been making promises to yourself and not keeping them, and every time you do that, you chip away at your confidence. But the opposite is also true. Every time you live in alignment with a higher standard, even in small ways, you rebuild that confidence. You create momentum, you build internal power, and that power compounds. So today is the day you draw the line, not tomorrow, not next week, today. You decide that the old standard of procrastination, self-doubt, indecision, blame, whatever it is, no longer serves you. You commit to the higher standard, the real standard, the one that demands excellence, effort, ownership, and consistency. And this isn't about being perfect. It's about being powerful. It's about having a standard that pulls you forward even when life pushes back. It's about knowing that your time is now, not when you feel ready, not when it's convenient, but now. When you walk with a higher standard, people feel it. Your energy changes. Your presence becomes undeniable. You stop needing validation because your actions speak for themselves, and that's when real growth happens. That's when transformation takes root, not because you hoped for it, but because you expected it. So raise it. Raise the standard. Raise the way you speak to yourself. Raise the way you show up in every room. Raise what you allow and what you refuse to tolerate, because your future doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your standard. And if you truly want to take control of your life, stop waiting for a perfect plan and start building an unshakable standard. A standard so solid that no excuse, no delay, no fear, no opinion can knock it down. Because once your standard is set at greatness, everything else has to rise to meet it. That's how change becomes permanent, not through hype, through habit, through alignment, through identity. And it all starts when you say, "This is who I am now. I don't settle. I don't negotiate. I don't shrink. I lead." So lead, set the standard, and never ever lower it again.